this is too good not to record.
Right.
Yeah. You just look at the WWE. You were saying.
See, now I'm under pressure.
Mike Shy.
Right.
So yeah,
No,
basically everyone's like a televised indie at this point. They're just it's.
Yeah, but you look at the WWE setup, and it's like this huge. We got all the screens. And
Oh, the
it's got
Thunderdome.
Yeah, and it has a different feel to it than the AEWs and the Ring of Honors and the Impacts.
Well, they also have the money to do it.
So does AEW.
Yeah.
Let's not
Oh,
fool
well,
ourselves.
probably. But
Like Tony Khan, I mean, he can sink as much money into AEW
Yeah.
as he wants.
well, I also think each person wants each organization needs to try to look a little bit different than the next. So AEW established early on they always had the wrestlers around the ring since day one during their shoots.
Yeah.
So day one they had that crowd that crowd quote unquote, but it was the other wrestlers, there's the other staff that weren't working were around the ring, so you'd still have that live feel. Whereas, the first one my wife and I painfully watched the first WWE event afterwards with Triple H on the mic, and they just kept talking about how weird it was the whole time. Like the more you talk about it,
You're bringing it up. Yeah. You're drawing attention to the situation.
And it was like so silent in there, and there was like no noise, and it was like watching a training center video basically, because there was nothing, except for Michael Cole and Triple H on the mic. It was just eerily silent.
Yeah.
And I think, so early on, I think AEW had the win for how do you do this as a show and still make it seem like you're invested in it. Of course,
yeah, it did give a little bit of a better atmosphere, like as far as the crowd goes, because there were at least people, even though they were wrestling characters, which I thought was a little weird.
Right.
It was like almost like every match is like a lumberjack match now.
Right. Yeah,
So
but they're
was a little strange.
They're on the other side of the fence, though.
Yeah, like they couldn't hop over.
Yeah, I know, right?
The velvet rope.
Oh no, it's so tall. I mean, Marco probably can't fit over it though. So.
Well, one thing we learned this week is walls don't work.
Oh my goodness. Walls. Yeah. So why are we spending so much wall on the southern border if the wall outside the Capitol building can't stop people from climbing it?
I couldn't do a very good job. But yeah, before we get into that, the wrestling deal, like it kind of reminded me when I first started, I worked for a company called New England Championship Wrestling, and it was like one of the first internet shows.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it at the wrestling school that the booker was running at the time. And what we would do is and this is an old school thing that people, I think, old school TV did, was the audience was in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
The audience, the wrestlers, were the crowd basically, but we were off camera. But we played roles, so like when the baby came out, we'd all cheer. And when the heel came out, we'd all boo. So like when you were watching the show, it sounded like there was a crowd there, like booing and cheering people, but you never saw them.
We just saw them. It was basically the dark audience,
Yeah,
keep everyone else in the dark.
And then you do like ringside interviews. Back in the day when they used to do like the ringside interviews after the matches, they would do that, and we'd be booing and cheering like appropriately, and it kind of, that it kind of reminded me. This whole thing kind of reminds me like not seeing the crowd, but having that crowd reaction too. Because I think WWE at one point too was like pumping in crowd noise. Which was really awkward.
I hated that in MLB when they were pumping in the crowd noise. I'm like, if there's no crowd, there's no crowd. Just own the no crowd thing. Turn the cameras, have the backdrop be the entrance, own the no crowd if there's no crowd there.
I think that's for the players though, right? Because there is that.
I don't know.
No. I mean, when you're playing a sport, you do feel that excitement with the crowd, even on the sidelines of athletic contests at like high school games, like I'm an athletic trainer, right? So,
but when you look up and there's no one physically there cheering, it's just piped in crowd noise from MLB The Show. It's like.
Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to ask somebody who's actually doing it at a pro level, but I do feel like there is that kind of like, reinforcement at least. You get that kind of audio reinforcement to.
Well, I mean, as far as the wrestling setup between Impact, WWE, and AEW goes, like you said, WWE's got the Thunderdome. Impact is just doing empty arena, but they're the same angle as AEW. But AEW, being that they're part of the Khan family, they are so lucky to be in the facility that they're in because they're in an open air facility.
Yeah.
So they're able to bring in now they're doing like 25% capacity crowds. So they're bringing in there's people coming into the shows now, and you see them in sections. They're all masked wherever they are, but they're spread out through the arena, and there's like a line of demarcation where you can see that, you know, there's no fans below this line in the stands. They're all up in the upper rafters. There's no one down below. So down below, this is the wrestling bubble. Up here is the fandom that are allowed to come in to their open air arena, which is kind of a benefit for, you know, for having that in this
huge
time.
And I just think too, like working to a crowd is just.
Oh yeah, well, especially
it's so much more helpful, right?
and anything that's live performance, yes. I mean, I never put my phone on silent. Oh, that was fail box.
Unprofessional.
Right, so unprofessional.
But yeah, I think we talked about this early on, like in one of our first podcasts about it, and it was like, it felt like training, right? It felt like when you're training, like that you pantomime all the like going to the crowd and like working the crowd a little bit, because you know you have to get used to doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nobody there, so it feels kind of weird. So, and that's what it felt like watching like early like wrestling before they got the kind of crowd situation like thought out, was like the guys would just go and, I say guys, the wrestlers would go and like, you know, cheer to the crowd that wasn't there, because you know, they were just so used to you work the crowd, like it's part of wrestling.
Again, you know, going back to the fact that we talked about AEW is kind of like a televised indie because they're the new upstart and it's still the mentality of the organization. And realistically, most of the roster didn't do TV before that show. So it's almost as, you know, if you're going to a pandemic where you're talking about we're going to have no crowd, what better performers do you want than people that are used to performing in front of no crowd? You know, WWE is like even though everyone started off in there, WWE is such a monster that, you know, all the top guys haven't performed in front of an indie crowd in 20 years.
Like when was the last time you've been to a WWE show? Like live?
WrestleMania 2 years ago was the last time I went. That's kind of unfair one to use as an example, I guess.
No, yeah, I mean, because that's like the big one. But the point I was thinking about was WWE shows, and I haven't really been to any other shows. I went to a Rumble a few years ago. I got tickets, and you can tell how much of a televised product it is when you're so there now.
Oh, well, I mean,
from back when we used to go, like when I was in college, you kind of saw the setup, like you kind of saw everything. But now when you go, it's
all about the TV
before crowds. It's a TV production.
I mean, right? Lillian Garcia comes out beforehand and says, "Hey, we're gonna go live in 30 seconds."
That always happened, right? You'd always have that, and I'm not even talking about that. No. I'm just talking about the way it feels like there's longer breaks,
right?
It feels like the way, I know, because I watch the referees a lot because I'm a wrestling referee, so I'm paying attention to them probably more than most people, and I'm watching what they're doing to you know, give people production cues and tell people like, oh, stay there, you know, stay there, we got a good shot. No, we're good. Yeah, we froze for a second.
Yeah, it was like, but whatever. We're back.
You know, you can see people setting up shots.
Yeah.
Which is kind of takes away from the.
I mean, I see that everywhere now because I've been paying attention so much in wrestling. I can always see like, oh, they're setting up a spot over there, they're setting up a spot over there, and it's like it's hard not to see now. Once you see it the first time, I think it's hard to unsee it.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about spots though, right, Keith? I'm talking about like you know, when you're setting up a shot, right? When you're setting up a you want this like even like after the matches, right? Like you do your replays and stuff, and they're like, oh, we have to have this person here on the ramp for when we come back from the replay to do their thing, and they're sitting there and they're waiting, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, and they're raising their hands and they're
I've totally seen that,
and they're playing to the camera, but they know they have to wait for the camera to be on them.
Because they're walking up the ramp really slow, and they're walking up the ramp really slow. They're not doing anything, and as soon as that red light goes on, all of a sudden,
sometimes they're literally standing there waiting for it. Like they're literally just standing there waiting for the camera to go on them to react, and it takes away from the live events. And
I think WWE treats the live audience as another prop, honestly, because like you said, it's so much shot for the TV show that the live audience at a regular like Raw or SmackDown broadcast is really just another prop. They're the background. They're the crowd noise for the TV audience because that's where they make the money. They don't,
Right, and
you
that's the
buy
evolution.
you
That's
buy
the
a
evolution
WWE
of
ticket for
wrestling.
30, it's $30 to go. It's not like they're making a ton of money on ticket sales. They're making their
That's
money
their
on
right.
merchandise
That's
and their
their
commercials.
right, and that's the evolution of wrestling, right? Because
Yeah,
it's become such a television product as
you're
whereas
right.
back in the
You know,
day it was more of a it was more of a geared towards a live audience.
there's nothing worse than having someone introduced to the ring before commercial break because they get introduced, then they walk down and they're standing in the ring for 3 minutes doing nothing.
Yeah,
And in house, either they're for the live audience, either they're showing some Subway commercial on the big screen or like John Cena's next movie commercial is what they're showing. It's like they all of a sudden cut to something that's totally not relevant to the match you're about to watch, and
yeah,
just show you stuff, or then they'll just dim the lights and play music. Then all of a sudden the lights come back up, and then the guy in the ring gets animated again, and then they introduce the other opponent, and then it's like, wow. So you could just not introduce them before the commercial break and just did something else. You could have had a circus clown come out and entertain us, tell us jokes or
yeah.
something.
They've taken a lot away from the audience as far as like going the live experience. Like, and that's what I really like about like the indies is that I feel like because it's television isn't the main goal.
Right. There
They
is
really
no
do.
break.
No, there's not. I mean, even like we do the iPay-per-views, but there's no commercial breaks during that.
Right.
So it's still like television, but it's not. You don't have commercial breaks or
Well,
these.
that's what kills me
You
about
do you do
WWE
have these
pay-per-views.
like long. Sometimes you'll have like a few minutes of a like an interstitial, like building up the next match or whatnot. But usually that's shown on the screen in the arena too.
Yeah. Right.
It's not like we're going to introduce somebody and then take a 2 minute break to and sit around for a little bit, right? It's gonna be before the match, and
I always hate
the
when
live audience. The live audience, you still keep the live audience involved.
I always hate when you're watching like the Royal Rumble and then they are still showing you commercials in the middle of the pay-per-view. I'm like, I didn't pay for the pay-per-view to watch more commercials.
Well,
The idea of paying for pay-per-view
you
is
gotta make
to,
that network money.
I know it just kills me. It's like, or we paid for to not have commercials and you're still showing me commercials that I can't fast
Yeah,
forward through. And you're just killing me here. Come on,
would
Vince.
you rather? Would you rather pay for a $60 pay-per-view?
Yes. But even then, even back in
Watch
the
a few
day,
commercials.
it was still you still had to pay for it. You still watch commercials even when you were paying the $60.
I don't remember any
There
real
were still like Subway
maybe
spots
one
and
or
stuff.
two.
It was just like why is there a break here? Come on, it should be boom boom. It should be wrestling, build up video, wrestling, build up video. This is the payoff. This is the
Right, well,
pay
like
per
it
view.
was like back in the day, like
Right.
you know,
We're talking
late '80s and
'90s.
'90s.
Right. This
Back
that
when
this is the payoff, and maybe don't make WrestleMania 7 hours long. Break it up into two nights like Wrestling Kingdom does.
well, it's still two nights if you count the NXT show beforehand.
Oh,
And
I'm talking about
Access
actual WrestleMania.
actual WrestleMania. Yeah.
You know what I mean? 7 hours is just it's too long.
Yeah.
I don't care.
It's creating content. That's all they care about.
Yeah, because like you can't. No one can pay attention to anything for that long of time.
No one's gonna be invested, and that's the thing. And you can tell in the crowd by the times like the WrestleManias that I've watched were in recent years. Like by the main event, everyone's
Yeah.
shot.
Either
The crowd is shot.
either I've fallen asleep on the couch,
Yeah.
or in the stands because you're just exhausted. Like and you're trying to keep that crowd engaged the whole time, and you can't keep that level of excitement the entire time. It's impossible.
Yeah, and then it's it's funny too because we'll complain about indie shows that are like over 3 hours long, and we're like, oh, why is this so long?
That's because afterwards
like,
you got to
the
clean
crowd,
up.
we're gonna kill the crowd by the main event. The crowd's just exhausted and tired, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, WrestleMania, we're gonna double that. It's 3 hours is nothing.
Well, it's a little different, I guess. Indie shows you got something to prove still. It's hard to keep the crowd. It's like, the difference between going to see a comedian that you've seen before and you're like excited to go about versus like going to an open mic. Be like, okay, make me laugh, funny boy. And it's like you got to work harder when you're not established. If you're the indie
Yeah.
wrestler, you got to work a little bit harder to entertain the people because like, yeah, show me what you got. Let's see that moonsault. Yeah. Oh, you slipped on the rope a little bit. Not impressed.
That is true.
You know,
Um,
but it's a shame because like, you know, the indies is like where you develop things and that's the downside of TV. It's like you make one little mistake, everyone's like, oh, they slipped on this. It's like, come on, these guys do the same spot. Wrestlers do the same spots over and over and over again. You don't think they're gonna slip once in a while, or they're gonna miss a
well, especially
spot?
with the spots they're doing now, right? I
They're
mean,
so high flying, you know.
everyone's got moves off the ropes and jumping and bouncing off. Like when I say
Right.
bouncing, I mean like jumping off like a trampoline off the ropes.
Yeah.
Like yeah, you're gonna slip once in a while. Like
Yeah.
hopefully you don't end up too messed up, but you know, I mean, that started like 20 years ago. ECW, the UF Dub chants, right? Like,
Yeah.
anytime a wrestler like slipped up a little bit, they would start the chants and get on them because. But that was what was great about ECW too. We go back to talking about crowds. Like the crowd was part of the show.
Right.
Like when you and a lot of wrestlers will say that a lot of that ruined wrestling, but that and kayfabe, but the reason the ECW crowd was so into it was because when you went to an ECW show, you felt like you were part of the show, almost just as much as the wrestlers were.
Yeah. You handed
Which
the
did
wrestler
piss
the
off a
chair.
lot of wrestlers,
Here, use my
but
chair.
but they were paying. You're paying their ticket, like
Yeah.
like you were making yourself part of the. You were injecting yourself into the show, and I think that's why a lot of the old school ECW fans like really enjoyed it because you did feel like you were part of like the product.
Right. I agree with that. Well, that was good wrestling talk for the morning.
Yeah. Good luck.
Anthony,
Good luck trying to fit that into the today's discussion.
well, we're just gonna soft roll it right in because I think it's a nice soft entry, and because 2021, nothing crazy has happened yet this year. It's been a nice,
It's been a very
nice,
smooth,
very
7-8
smooth
days.
transition into 2021.
Yeah, 2020 is behind us. Everyone's excited. So.
I think the confirmation of the electoral votes went off without a hitch. I think nothing happened, right?
Let's start off with some good news.
Okay, we're gonna go backwards. And
Georgia.
And that's what
Georgia.
Georgia.
Blue Georgia.
The news in Georgia was overshadowed by the tragedy in DC. But yes,
By the siege on our capital.
Georgia awoke. The wife and I we stayed up. We were trying to stay up late as the votes were being tallied to see how soon are they going to be. And we saw it going back and forth as they're coming in. We're like, okay, it's close. I'm just gonna go to bed.
Yeah, I think I went to bed around like 1, and they'd called it for Warnock and Purdue. And then I woke up and they were like, well, Purdue's iffy.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, that's still better than I thought. I did not give the Democrats a chance. I'll be completely 100% honest. I didn't think they were going to win. I thought the polls were too tight, and the polls in the presidential election were kind of lean blue a little bit. So I thought I usually like to shave a couple of percentage points, at least like 1.5 percentage points off the polls for Democrats, because it seems like Democrats, I don't know for whatever polling reasons, seem to get a little bit of a bump in the polls, and I think that's been shown in the past 4 years or so.
Polls are all messed up.
Concrete studies, but
where's your numbers?
Right, and and looking at the polls, they're not that inaccurate. Like people are killing polls right now as far as like, oh, they're worthless. They're not worthless, but you just got to, number one, take them with a little bit of a grain of salt and realize they don't necessarily need to be accurate as far as what the election results are going to happen. Right, they're a poll. They're a survey. Right,
they're a snapshot.
Yeah, and usually they're a lot more. Not as big as a percentage of the population as people like to think.
There's huge problems with polling. I mean, we can get into that.
If you use 1,000 people, like that's not a great like representation of the. And 1,000 people seems like a lot of people, but it's not. When we're talking about millions of people, it's really not that big of a representation.
And polls are also it's based on how you ask the questions. It's based on who you're calling, what phone number you're calling, when you're calling. So who actually
that whole debate between landlines and cell phones and.
Yeah. Are you actually doing representative?
No, I don't have a landline. Do you have a landline?
No, I will. Yes, but it's not hooked up.
That's fair.
Because it's
I actually do.
It's part of the cable
Part of the cable
package.
package. Yeah, I'm the same. I'm actually the same way. I know.
It's,
I
it's
think
cheaper
about it.
it's cheaper to have the landline and cable than just to have internet.
Once,
So
once in a while on my TV, the phone number will pop up and like this number's calling. I'm like, I don't. No one has my number. I don't even know what my
yeah,
phone
we
number
don't know.
is.
Well, we don't use the cable box either, so I never even see that. So because we just use the YouTube TV, so it's like the cable box is in the basement. The phone's never been hooked up. I don't know what's happening with it. So whatever. But yeah, so Georgia, we got a blue flip. Both Senate seats flip blue, which is remarkable, amazing, hopeful. We now have Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Well, that's the bonus, right? Because you know it's. I mean, with the slim lead, I don't think we're going to get many progressive policies passed by the Senate, right?
No,
Because there's still a few conservative Democrats, relatively conservative Democrats that'll shut anything like overly
super
progressive
progressive,
down.
yeah.
But it does give Democrats control of the committees. It takes away Mitch McConnell's blocking of like bills that the House passes.
I think that's the biggest part right there.
That's a huge deal, and you know it's better, right? It's things still need to be fixed in this country, but it's at least we're going to move in the right direction a little bit, right?
Well, just taking Mitch McConnell off the throne after the years he's been on there, I think is a huge step in the right direction, because to have him in charge for so long in that seat and like you said, blocking so much legislation because either he just doesn't agree with it personally or he uses the excuse of, well, it'll never pass, so we're just not going to bother bringing it up for a vote. You know,
Sure.
now that's not that can't happen anymore. So now we're going to be able to see what happens. You know, what does Schumer bring up for a vote? Do we have more consensus between the House and the Senate? Do we see more bills coming through? Do we end up getting $2,000 stimulus checks instead of $600? Hey, here, go see a Star Wars. Come on, what am I gonna do with that $600? Actually, we donated one of our checks because
That's good.
well, you know, we look at, my wife and I look at each other
You're both
like,
working,
well,
right?
we're working, we don't need it, and one of our neighbors down the street, he's a pastor of the local church, or one of the local churches, and they've been running food banks every week. And so we ask, you know, what's the need? What do you guys need? And like, because it's always after the holidays, and this is the thing that people always forget and don't think about. You know, the biggest time that people donate food is always between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then right after Christmas, it drops off, and food donations go down, and people that need it don't get as much food. So we took basically one of our checks and we bought a series of $25 Stop and Shop gift cards to give to the food bank, because
Cool.
you know they obviously they take non-perishable foods, but they still need the gift cards so people can go out and buy perishable foods for their families. So
Yeah,
that's
that's a great point. And you know, don't obviously always donate what you can. But and yeah,
and I'm not trying to say like, oh, look how great we are, but it's like if
it's a little bit of virtue
if you
signaling,
don't
Keith.
if you don't
Right.
need it, you know. Well, I'm saying if you don't need it, we, you know, well, not saying we didn't save some, but because you know you get it for the kids too. So like we took the money for the kids, put in their savings account. Like, okay, fine, it's theirs. Then we took the part of it, and we're like, oh, we don't. It's kind of like guilty. We almost feel guilty like keeping this money for ourselves when, like we said, we're both still employed. We don't need it right now. Give it to some people that are starving.
And that's why you're not a billionaire, Keith.
Well,
you gotta hoard
true.
that. You gotta hoard that money.
My
you
name is
hoard it.
My name is not Elon Musk.
That's not billionaire thinking. Oh, Elon. I was reading a thread about Elon before we came on, and something about him like basically like I'm good with my money. Like I'm doing good things, and it's okay. I'm glad you think so. And I mean, we could get it a whole.
I feel like I should save Elon for another
billionaire. Billionaire philanthropy, which is you know, it's a weird flex. It's like
billionaire philanthropy.
You know, I'm exploiting the world, but I'm helping things. Right? I'm doing good things. It's almost like you know, trying to be absolved from your guilt, right? It's like, yeah, you know, I'm exploiting workers, and you know, I'm trying to overthrow governments in other parts of the world. But I donate my money.
It's like I have such a, I used to like really look, the idea of Tesla and SpaceX and all that. I'm like, oh, this looks really cool, and like look what they're doing. But it's like as far as like Tesla goes, I'm like, they started a revolution, but they're not going to win that revolution. They're not going to end up being they push the needle forward of like saying, hey, look, we can make electric cars both sexy and efficient instead of just like, because before Tesla, think about it, most electric cars were like, what a tree hugger would buy.
Right.
They're trying to like take a hot hatch and put a battery in it basically, because like this is what an electric car should look like. And they're like, oh no, we're gonna make the Roadster, and we're gonna make a really fast electric car to like get rich people to buy it, so we can build more cars in this. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But whether you like Tesla or not, the side effect of it is that now you have GM, Nissan, Toyota, Volvo, Volkswagen, all these other car companies committing to converting all or most of their fleet into full electric within the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and I think by the time we leave this earth, I think the majority of the cars on the road will be electric.
Right.
I just think it's something that has to be done.
Or some sort of
we might not make it that far.
Or some sort of alternate fuel combination. Hydrogen. I think Toyota is actually going back to researching hydrogen.
Yeah, well, yeah. So something that's not gasoline based,
right.
Basically.
No more fossil fuels.
Yeah, which is going to upset the people in Alaska who just got permission to basically do more drilling up in Alaska.
Actually, I didn't hear the follow-up because that news got overshadowed.
Everything got
the other
overshadowed.
Day because that was a big news headline in the morning that the leases were open up, but the sub headline for that was that they weren't actually expecting people to jump on the leases because they were just expecting Biden to overturn it once he took office.
Right.
So why bother signing up for the lease if it's not going to be available?
Right. And
so, which makes sense. But I see that as one of the last things of Trump. Like, okay, you know what? I'm leaving. Let's just open up the land so everyone can drill, and let's do this and let's do that. Okay, let's circle back to the other day. This horrible day, a stain on our history. The only second time in the history of the United States that the Capitol building has been breached.
Since the British burned it down in the War of 1812. I'm not sure exactly.
1814, I believe, was the year it happened. It was CNN mentioned it when I was watching. Because I don't know about you, but we were glued to the TV, and then to the computer.
I was.
We didn't want
I was back and forth between TV. I usually watch MSNBC, and then I'll flip over to Fox. I was looking for the Newsmax, a little OAN. I don't know what's on my cable system. I was looking for it, but I can't find it. I don't know exactly what channel it is. There's so many damn channels on cable. But I do like to flip over to Fox once in a while to see what the talking heads over there are talking about. And even they were like, "This is ridiculous."
Oh yeah, but then last night we were watching Hannity, and he was basically, yeah, but where were the liberals talking about the riot? And then he was just talking about everything that happened over the summer. And like basically he did the classic deflect. Well, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, like whataboutism is a real problem right now. Because you see a lot of that on the internet. But yeah, Hannity's right now is lobbying for whatever Trump media conglomerate he's gonna because I really feel like Trump is gonna start his own. He's either gonna like invest heavily into one of these far right wing which is crazy to think about, like further right than Fox, like media news. Well, I mean, conglomerates, like OAN or Newsmax. I think he's either gonna buy one of these or invest heavily into one of these, buy one, or start his own.
I mean, Hannity last night also was heavily promoting Parler. He's like, yeah, I'm on Parler. I'm telling all my friends to get on Parler, because now Twitter's shutting down Trump. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, Trump got zucked, and Twitter was like, you got to delete these tweets or we're banning you.
Yeah, as my friend put it, Zuckerberg closes the barn doors after the horse has already left.
I mean, it's a little bit too late, guys.
It's like the damage is done. Like, again, it's all the posturing. It's like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham giving their speeches it's again,
That was
20 years
pathetic.
ago.
And
Come on.
Lindsey Graham, sorry, Lindsey Graham's speech was, I thought, was pathetic. Mitch
Right.
McConnell actually,
Mitch McConnell's on brand.
his speech wasn't that grating on me for whatever reason, but but you don't expect me to just, like, pat you on the back and say, oh, it's okay, like, you're doing good now. Like, no,
No,
like,
I never will.
get out of here, man. Like,
Well,
um,
he's a politician through and through, and he like I've said many times before to people, Mitch McConnell jumped on the Trump train because it got him where he was going, and he jumps off when it's no longer beneficial to him.
also too, it's Mitch McConnell just got reelected, right? He's not
Yeah,
running again for 6 years.
yeah,
And
he does.
that's even if he runs again for Senate. I mean, I don't know how old Mitch McConnell is. He's got to be up there somewhat. So running again in 6 years for Senate, I don't know if he's gonna. So it's easy for him to come out and say, and plus, too, 6 years from now, Americans have short memories, Keith.
Oh God, yeah.
Americans have short memories. I don't know if this is they're going to be on people's minds 6 years from now, and that's scary. That's scary to me. But people do have short memories, and I think one of the biggest takeaways I have from all this is people don't care that much.
That's
Like,
always the
people like,
saddest
I
part.
think people like you and me, and probably some of whoever is going to listen to this podcast, like who
Mitch
cares about
Mitch
these kind of
McConnell
things.
is 78 years old.
See, there you go. So he'd have to run as an 84-year-old.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to happen. But getting back to my point, people who are politically invested and people who look into this kind of things, and I mean, I'm not saying we're political experts or anything, but we do like to talk about it, and I think that's being engaged is one of the best things you can do. But I think your average person doesn't really care about any of this. Number one, we're brought up to not care about not care about the government at all, right? We're kind of brought up to be like the government is default bad.
Right.
The politicians are as a default are bad. They're out for their own interests, and a lot of this is true, and I think that's why a lot of people buy into this. But the Capitol building, people broke into it. Like, that's a big deal.
First of all, it's a federal crime. All those people committed federal crimes. And what kills me is, and they posted about it on social media, like their face in there, and some of those are actors that are known people. Like
they're not scared.
They're not scared, but they're gonna be
the
scared.
President told them to do it.
They'll be scared when so. The reason why, above all else, I think that we should remove. Well, there's many reasons, but I said this yesterday, where so all these people, they committed federal crimes, right? President could still pardon them.
He's not.
He could, though.
He could. I saw you post that. With that, you would have to assume that Trump cares about these people.
Well, that's a fair point. That is a fair point, because they're not personal friends of his. They're not billionaires.
No. What is Trump going to pardon the QAnon barbarian guy? Like, what? Like,
I'm going to make him into a D&D character.
Oh my God. I've seen a couple memes about him. I don't want to give him any credit or anything, but
no,
the memes about him were pretty funny. Copy his link. Like, you can cosplay as the QAnon. I don't even know. It was QAnon shaman. That's what he's called. I'm gonna call him the QAnon barbarian because
he's more of a barbarian.
His outfit. But
you're right. You bring up a great point. It's like, why would Trump pardon these people? He doesn't care about
these people. They love him, right? And they think he's God, and they worship the ground that he walks on. Mm-hmm. He could give up. He doesn't care about these people at all. He could care less if these people get arrested and thrown in jail for 20 years. He just doesn't bother him at all.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's like, what? Oh, and that just bothers me even more.
Does Trump need to be removed from office? Yes, but he needed to be removed from office years ago.
Right. I mean, we went down this road already, and
it's not going to happen. And
it's not
going to happen within the next
12 days.
12 days. We got 12 days. What do we do about the inauguration? Should it be virtual? Should we not? Should we not make it public? Which is sad. It's a sad thought.
Well,
but at this point, I don't think we can. There's a legitimate threat.
Usually, so on our inauguration day, I've never personally been, but I know people that have gone to inauguration. The security for inauguration is beyond. Like, there's a perimeter of, like, I forget how many miles, but there is a perimeter around the Capitol that you have to go through security to get in. And there's, there's dump trucks and blockades around it. So it's not like you can't drive a car there. You can't just run in. There's legitimate security forces, and it's not going to be a public event where people are allowed to come like in the past. They already said most of it's going to be virtual, so they're going to have the dais there with him getting sworn in and everything. There was going to be a small delegation up there, just for, I think, pop and circumstance and tradition kind of stuff. But you're not going to have people on the lawn like you would in the past. That's not going to be there.
Well, it wouldn't be as big an event anyway because of COVID, right?
Right.
But,
well, that's why he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want people to come out as crowds.
But regardless of COVID, we would, I would have thought there was good security at the Capitol up until a few days ago.
Well, I mean, so I'm reading so many different things, and it's hard to know what's true right now because it's, of course, still being looked at. One thing I saw was that initially the Capitol Police they didn't want the National Guard. They said, we don't need your help initially. That was one thing I saw. Another thing I've seen, and again, this is all those things I've been reading in news articles. I don't have confirmation on any of these things or what's true or what's not, and it's all being investigated right now. But, you had people that were part of the insurgents were also part of the police department, were flashing badges to get in.
I did hear that. And like I said, I don't know how true that is. But it's,
you gotta believe that some people that were there were part of law enforcement or military and were at some
100%.
level.
100%. I wouldn't doubt it. Just statistically, you would think. There was a fucking West Virginia lawmaker,
right? That newly elected lawmaker that was there.
Like went, and I don't know if he was one of the people who went into the Capitol, but
he was part of the crowd.
He was definitely part of the crowd. Yeah, it's crazy to think about. But like I was getting back to, people don't seem to care that much overall, right? People don't seem to think it's that big of a deal, which is weird to me. Like I said, people like you and I who are pretty politically invested as far as the average person goes, I think are shocked and appalled. But I think the average person really doesn't think anything about it. Like they're just like, oh well, these people were oh my god, like they
were not protesters.
Yeah, they're. I see a lot of people like, I condone protesting and things like. Sorry. Comparing it to the BLM protest over the summer.
Oh yeah, of course they're gonna.
A lot of people, and they're centrists, right? And these people are like middle of the road centrists. These people aren't Trump's like huge Trump flag carriers. These are like normal centrist, like somewhat politically engaged, but don't really have like a strong ideology either way. And they're comparing it to Black Lives Matter protests, and it's like, what do you mean? Like I see people like, well, if you condone the riots during the summer, what's the difference about this? And it's like,
there's a difference.
See a difference?
There's a difference between raiding a Target and breaking into a federal building where people are inside and threatening them. These people did not show up as protesters. If you look at the images, they're wearing body armor. They're wearing tactical gear.
Well, they wear it everywhere because they're cosplayers, Keith.
But still,
they're like, LARPers.
You don't like one of the he's got the handcuff zip ties.
Yeah, because they want to take hostages, and that's what they thought. And yeah, you're right about that. I didn't see any Black Lives Matter protesters. There's walking around with zip ties looking to take hostages. Right. But it's also like, think about what they're protesting.
They're protesting democracy.
It's literally they're protesting. They're literally protesting a democratic process
because they believe that it was fraudulent. And that's because they've been led to believe that, and we have too many leaders, aside from just Trump, because it'd be one thing if Trump was saying it and everyone else was saying no, you got to back down. But then you have people like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, people like that, and Hawley.
Josh Hawley, oh my God,
that are promoting it and supporting it. And reiterating and repeating it, that they're giving legitimacy to it, they're giving voice to it, and now what could have been one person's mad ramblings turns into a legitimate thing for more people. If it was just Trump saying it, you'd have less people believing it.
Right, and there's still a lot of Republicans out there. And I'm not talking about, like I said, these people aren't like Trump wave like flag carrying like crazy people, but they still believe, oh well, there might have been something wrong with the election. Because that's the thing. If so many people start to say these things, they start to question it.
Or you have people saying, well, because you have people that are questioning it, we should still do something to investigate just to give more evidence that there was
I
nothing
would
wrong.
love to investigate the elections. I have 100%. I have no problem investigating the elections.
But that's not. But here we can. But no, I firmly believe that you're not going to change people's minds. People that
No.
believe it was fraudulent are always going to believe it was fraudulent, no matter what you do. You could
you're
have
right.
you could have the entire Senate. I mean, don't get me wrong.
But at least then people like us would have an argument against it. We could say these things were investigated heavily, right?
Let's go ahead. After inauguration, Joe Biden appoints, all right, you know what? Go create a committee of 10 senators, 10 House members, whatever. Put a committee together of like bipartisan from different states and investigate it.
Right.
Spend a year doing it and come back with your findings and make it transparent. Show all the documents to the public, to the people and everything, and then be done with it.
Right. And because the courts didn't take any of these cases up, because obviously there was no evidence to take any of these, no reason to take any of these cases up, what Trump and his supporters have been able to say is these people didn't want to look at the evidence. They didn't even want to see, they didn't want to take this to court because they knew it was the answers were going to come back in the way they didn't want them to. And that's not the way things work, but it's good rhetoric, right? It's good language. It's easy to say, well, if they don't look into it, they're not going to find it. Yeah, but so here's the thing. The people who went into the Capitol doing what they did, right? I'm not mad about the protests.
You can protest. Protest is fine.
And I'm not even mad about the property damage, right? I'm not mad about them smashing windows. I don't care about that kind of stuff. What I care about is the reason. The reason why are they doing this? And like we said, they literally are riding against democracy. We have a democratic process where we elect a president, and they're like, no, this needs to be stopped. And that's a problem.
And they're being riled up by the person that lost, his son, and his lawyer. And they, those clips, you see the clips, Rudy Giuliani saying, let's have trial by combat.
Rudy Giuliani, I accept your challenge, Rudy.
You're right. Let's go. Come on.
Let's go.
You want trial by combat? Let's
in the
do
ring.
this.
Let's go. I will fight Rudy Giuliani in public for free. I'm putting that out there right now. If he wants to come fight me, I am all for it.
Trial. Winner gets the White House.
Winner gets chicken dinner. I don't care.
Winner chicken dinner.
The reason to fight Rudy Giuliani, and that would make my year, actually. So if Rudy Giuliani wants to fight, let's go. But yeah, people don't seem to care as much as they should, which is a problem. At the same time, like I said, I was telling my wife too, it was like, these people believe that the election was stolen.
They believe it, wholeheartedly.
So if someone came up to you and were like, Keith, someone's raping your loved one or murdering your loved one or like causing harm, but don't worry about it. Just stay over there. Don't do anything about it. We'll take care of it. Like, you'd be like, no, I'm going to go do something about it. And that's the way these people feel, right? They feel like, I need to do something about this. Like, democracy is being in their minds, democracy is being attacked by the Democrats and China and whoever and the bankers. And could you imagine associating with these people? Number one, that's a whole nother topic. We'll get into that next.
Of course, these people don't understand what democracy is, though.
Well, a lot of people don't understand what I've seen. I had an argument with a friend of mine about, and this is another whataboutism claim, but he was basically saying like, oh, you talk about democracy, but the Democrats have been trying to overturn democracy for the past 4 years. And I pushed back on him, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean by pushing back on democracy? And he didn't have an answer for me. He never responded. So I still don't know. And then he made another post about it. So I don't know what he means by, and I think I know what he means by overturning democracy is overturning the presidential election 4 years ago, because that was a big right-wing talking point, right? That the impeachment was trying to overturn democracy somehow. But that's not democracy, right? Like
impeachment process is actually part of our democratic
right. Impeachment is a political procedure
in the Constitution.
In the Constitution, in law, carried out by elected officials. Like I don't overturn. Like I don't know what you mean by that. It was a big right-wing talking point, and a lot of people ate it up because it sounded good, right? Oh, they're trying to overturn my vote, right? I voted for Trump, and they want to overturn my vote. Yeah, but we're doing it in a democratic process, right? It's still not. We're not storming the White House and saying get out, right? We're not storming the Capitol building and saying we're not going to elect them.
We didn't
go to
show
Inauguration Day.
We didn't show up and like storm the Senate floor and take selfies.
Right. Well, that's you talk about the police. And we could talk.
Oh no, I wasn't talking about that one. I was. I'm talking about the guy that sat in the where Pence was sitting.
Oh yeah.
You know?
But the selfies with the police and stuff too. That was kind of disgusting. The fact that people are comparing this to Black Lives Matter is kind of telling, because, I mean, obviously, like, one person unfortunately did get shot and killed. There were 5 deaths overall, I believe.
Because an officer died this morning who was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher.
But I mean, to anyone who followed the protest over the summer, like the law enforcement was treating these people a lot kinder than I saw over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an issue right there, and a lot of people are bringing up that issue, and I'm seeing a lot of pushback on that.
But as also, definitely from some video clips too, like they did not, they didn't anticipate violence, so they didn't have the security they should have, is one of the statements that came out from it. And you could say they were definitely not anticipating, because you had some, I forget which channel I saw.
There was more security during the women's march.
Oh yeah, I mean, you had one guy. There was one door where there was one guard, and he was running for his life.
I saw that, and that was crazy.
Like he's running up the stairs away from them because there's a mob coming in through the door, and he's one man, and he's not going to be able to stop
and at that point, yeah, that poor guy, I would just
leave.
Be like, right, you guys got it. I'm one person. You're literally a bunch of mobs.
Yeah, I'm not going to die for this right now. I'm going to fall back to a defensive position. That's what I'm going to do.
But if this was Black Lives Matter, there would have been.
Well, if Black Lives Matter, they had
been bloodshed.
They had 10 rows of military uniforms on the steps.
Yeah.
Ready to
opening fire. There were fire hoses came out, and this is the hard thing to argue about things like this, because it's hypothetical. Right. And so I can't say for sure like what would happen. I don't know, because it's a hypothetical. But I'm just comparing what I saw over the summer and the protest and the way things were handled then compared to this thing. And,
well, come on, we've seen Native people being sprayed with fire hoses over pipelines, so, and they were sitting down peacefully. Yeah, no, it's you have
because they have to protect Capitol, but
so it depends on who you are. If you don't think white privilege isn't a thing, wake the fuck up.
Thank you, 100%.
Because
there's still a lot of people that don't.
That was 100% white privilege the other day. It was like, these are, another faculty here posted like, wow, there's a lot of people that look like me there, because he's an older white guy with no hair, and like they're all white people for the most part. 99% of the people.
Yeah, you'll get white. One. You'll see like a person of color like once in a while in those rallies, but.
Well, Hannity had them on. Hannity had his 2 black friends on.
Hannity always has them on. Hannity, oh man.
Yeah, it's only 2 people. It's the same 2 people every time. I'm like
at the risk of sounding racist, like Hannity should like literally put like on their chyron like token, like
token 1 and token 2.
Yeah, because that's what he does all the time.
Oh, I'm like I said that to my wife. I was like, oh look, the token's here, because it's exactly what he's doing. He's
like, I hate to see things like, because it does come off as a bit racist, but
he does it. He's like, well, I'm going to validate it by having these black people that think the same thing that I do.
Exactly.
Talk about it.
Like Candace Owens makes a career out of it.
It's like, come on.
She infuriates me, Candace Owens.
It's like, just because you have 2 black people on your TV show that have your views does not make it true.
Yes. Yes.
Their individual experience does not speak for the experience of the rest of the black population.
Exactly.
And I'm standing here as a white person saying
Well, that's the thing too. Neither does our experience. So maybe
no.
that's why I find it hard to talk about a little bit, because it really isn't our place, but at the same time it needs to be said.
And again, go back to another show, and then there needs to be allies too. So
there's always gonna be outliers.
No, allies. I mean, we have to be
allies. Yeah. No. I misunderstood.
No, it's okay. Sometimes I slur, especially when I get excited, and I drink.
Well, really, you shouldn't be drunk yet.
No. Oh, the other day I was.
I saw a lot of. Can we take a pause from dry January?
I said, is it too early to start drinking? Asking for a country.
I think I did see that post actually.
But it was heartbreaking. It was hard to watch, and I'm fearful for what might still come to pass in the future.
That's what I'm talking about the inauguration. Like, we still have steps to take, and people aren't done.
No,
I think I would hope that security would be a little bit beefed up after this situation.
I think it will be for that, especially inauguration. You have Secret Service going to be there and all that stuff. You talk about a different level when you have a president in the area. The House and the Senate, they meet. They meet all the time.
They still have Secret Service and whatnot.
Right, but you don't have sharpshooters on the roof during that.
No.
During inauguration, you may not see them, but there's sharpshooters on the roof.
Yeah. No,
you know what I mean? And you see one person breach the barrier, you're gonna see one person dead.
But yeah, that's the thing though. You won't see one person breach the barrier.
Right.
You'll see thousands of people breach the barrier. I mean, how many people were at this?
Yeah, I didn't see any numbers.
I didn't see. What do you like? I've heard up to like 150,000. I think.
I don't know. There were definitely a lot of people, and again,
not everybody was there. Not everyone was there to storm the castle.
I believe in protest. Protest is our democratic right. If you have a grievance, you're allowed to protest. And those people that are there to protest peacefully, I have no problem with that. I disagree with what you're protesting about, but that's what protest is about. But it's the 200 people that stormed the Bastille. What was it? Someone said, "Hey, they're storming the Bastille, but except they want to keep the king in power."
Right. So it's a very weird situation.
I'm like, wait a second.
But and that's the thing too. Like, what do you call this? Because I've seen a lot of the word coup thrown out a lot, and I've even used the word coup a few times.
Or insurrection.
Insurrection, insurgents, sedition. What? That's the hard thing. What do you call this event? Because I don't know what their goal was, other than we're going to stop this process from happening, which they obviously. I mean, if someone took 5 seconds to think about it, they would have said, "Well, it's not going to stop it, right? No. It's not like they're going to come in and even if they got hostages, and even if they started executing members of the Senate on the floor on national television, it still technically wouldn't stop the process from happening.
No,
it'd be awful, right? And it would definitely make for some news, and it would change the way we look at politics, and maybe that's the goal. But it still wouldn't stop the actual process from happening. I heard things like they were going to go rationally. Yeah, maybe that's my problem.
Because rationally you think, because we all think this. If you think rationally, that they have an escape plan for the House and Senate. They have a plan in place to make sure that the president and the Speaker of the House are protected at all times. They have safe rooms. They have a bunker. They have an underground subway that can take them to another location. This all exists inside the Capitol building for these reasons.
Well, that's also the benefit of not having a centralized leader, because there was nobody leading this protest, right? There was no one real leading the charge here other than the president of the United States.
And himself. He said, "I'll be with you," but then he didn't go. So it's not like
we're gonna march in with him. That would have been a sight,
right? But
again, he doesn't care about these people, right? He needs these people, but he doesn't care about these people.
Right? They're pawns.
They're
cannon fodder.
Oh, basically. But yeah, that's what I'm like. That was my big takeaway too.
They're ego stroking.
What was the plan? What was, other than we're going to pause this process? What was the actual plan? They obviously weren't going to they weren't prepared to hole up in the Senate, right? They weren't going to just
What is that noise?
That's my cat going crazy.
That's a weird noise for a cat.
Yeah, it's purring to the other cat, trying to get its attention. Weird. It's a
So
weird cat.
so I think part of it is because if you look at the history of Trump himself, basically he whines and complains and threatens until he gets what he wants, and it's always worked up until now.
Yeah.
If you look at his history, career in business, basically he threatens with lawsuits, he threatens with strong arming, and even his political career, he's threatened with talking bad about people and lawsuits and things like that, and it has worked up until now. And now he keeps trying the same tactics, and he thinks, you know what, we're gonna pressure this person, and then they're gonna do it. I'm gonna pressure Mike Pence, and he's gonna change the results. Oh, if Pence isn't gonna do it, I'm gonna have people go and protest, and that's gonna make them change the results. In his head, he thinks as long as he keeps complaining, as long as he keeps making a fuss and threatening with legal action or whatever, that something will happen in his favor. He doesn't know how to lose because he's never lost.
Yes, substantially. I guess you're right there.
Like I said, he's never played a real sport where he's lost. He's never been on a team. He's never played a team sport. He didn't do little league,
Yeah.
and where you learn how to lose gracefully and stuff like that, which is important life lessons. That's why kids should be in sports, to learn how to lose. By the way,
you got to learn how to lose. That is true.
But he's never learned that lesson, and now he's learning it at 72 years old, or whatever age he is. I forget. He's old, 76, 72.
Yeah, somewhere.
And that's what we're getting,
Yeah, and I get he's lashing out. I just, like I said, I don't know what to call this situation. It's definitely a black mark on the country. It's a black mark.
74. Sorry.
Yeah.
Had to look it up.
I was thinking about this like 100 years from now, like when we're probably gone. I don't expect to live to 140.
I don't. Neither do I.
Or even like in the future, like when the historians look back, right, and we read about these in the history books, when your great grandchildren are in elementary school and middle school, like what are they going to learn about this decade, right? This presidency. How is this going to be described? Is a question that keeps coming back to me.
Well,
I don't know. Like it's a strange time, and I think it goes to the fact I think we are living in a transitional century or so, right? I think this is one of the times when we look back in like far history, like we're gonna see this.
This is a big significant shift, right, at this moment.
Time, yeah.
This is going to be one of those pivot points where we go from here to here. And there's going to be a cultural shift. There's going to be a governmental shift.
Right. I think this happens every couple, like 100 years or so, where we see like an ideology in the world change. And I think that number one is the internet has a lot to do with that, right? We're a much smaller community than we were even 40 years ago. The way we can interact with other people, across the world is significantly different. And I also think, at least I hope this is, someone brought up, this could be the death throes of racism. I think you really do see this as a backlash to electing the first black president in this country. Donald Trump is definitely part of that. I think this whole situation, like the rise in fascism, is a part of that. The rise in white supremacy,
which were totally on display.
Attacks.
You saw the T-shirts, the Auschwitz camp.
Oh my God, that guy! Oh,
the 6 million were not enough shirt.
Yeah,
you see that one too.
That's the thing. And I think I said a sentence and I lost my train of thought about that. Like, imagine associating with these people.
Right, like you're a regular person, and alongside you is a person that believes that the Holocaust was a great thing.
Like even as a Trump supporter, like number one, like I have a hard time understanding your ideology there. But imagine like being like next, like at a rally with, like if I was at a Black Lives rally and someone was wearing like a Auschwitz sweatshirt hoodie, like
what are you doing here?
like, why? Wait, whoa, maybe I'm on the wrong team. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Exactly.
leave.
You show up to a party and there's people wearing some things that you're questioning, and then you walk away because you don't want to associate with those people. And but
I
they
think
were
that that's a big difference too between conservatives and leftists, and especially like fascists and leftists, is that leftists police themselves almost too heavily sometimes. like like we we don't treat tankies very well, right? We don't treat like pro China and pro like Soviet Union um, leftists, communists, the same way that it seems like
right.
the conservatives treat basically Nazis. Like,
Yeah, because we're not pro China. China government's really messed up, and we're not
yeah,
even.
just because they're communists doesn't mean like
I don't
I
care.
like
No,
completely. I mean, you're not really a communist.
no.
I consider myself a communist.
Well,
Um,
the problem is communist is a great idea, but poor in practice.
well, I mean, that's why you have. It'll never. That's the thing too with communism, as well as something I'm learning. Is that you're never. It's never really done. Right, it's not an ideology where you like you get it and it's done. It's always there's always more equality to be had.
Well, the problem is with communism, the way it's been done in any country is never been done correctly because it's always been the it happened to the population except for the ruling class. You still had the
Right,
bourgeoisie, and you still had people
which
benefiting
is the
from it.
idea. What's the idea of communism is to eliminate the bourgeoisie,
But it doesn't. It
but
just it
it never does because there's always going to be someone in power. The idea is to have to make everything as equal as we can. And
right.
I don't think that process ever stops. And I think that's what I'm learning as a leftist is that it's not something that it just happens and you're done. You're never going to
No.
be done. You're never going to be done with communism. There's always going to be something to fight for. There's always going to be some inequality to fight against. Right. So there's my leftist rant for the podcast.
Yeah, to make things more equal is always going to be harder because things always change too. You have new inequalities, you have new benefits, and how do you redistribute things over time is how you have to kind of try to figure things out after a while. So,
Right.
no,
Which is why
nothing.
I am a little more practical in my communism, and maybe that's because
That's
I'm
why
older.
democracy never is over either because democracy is it's
There's always
messy.
threats to democracy, and we saw that this week, right?
You have threats to democracy, and you have to change how it works too because like we were having a conversation yesterday with family about just how the fact that part of the problem with the voter, the reason why people think there's voter fraud and all this stuff is because every state has their own voter laws and none of them are the same. And so people get confused by that. Like people, I think, like we go to your point about the average person, right? The average person that doesn't educate themselves and learn about the fact that each state, because of how our constitution is written, how it's supposed to be states' rights, every state it's up to the state to figure out how to run an election. There's no federal mandate of saying this is how you run the election. It's up to the state to say this is how I run the election and give you my results. Um, and because of that, each state calls things slightly differently. They run it slightly differently, and that's how you go. Well, this state had early ballot. This state had absentee ballot. They're both really the same thing, mail-in ballot versus absentee ballot, but the states call them different things.
Right,
And
and
so,
also might have some little bit differences in how you run things, and
so you
that's what I kind of find very hypocritical because I can't remember. I'm trying to remember who it was now, and I can't place it. But I remember watching because I was watching a little bit of the procedure after everything that happened when they came back. I was trying to stay up and watch a little bit of that, and I can't remember who it was, but it was one of the Republican senators was up there talking about how we don't have like a procedure for like federal presidential voting. Like we have like the Senate has
right.
their own rules, and the Congress has their own, and the representatives have their own rules. But like for president, there's no real like set boundaries or rule or whatever. And I'm like, wait, isn't your whole thing like states, right? Like the state runs the election, and the state, because it's not, that's the way we elect the president in this country, right? If you want to go to like a popular vote where the federal government runs the election, I'm all for that. But if like the way we have the situation now is like is literally the states elect the president.
Right.
Like the states vote based on how many representatives they have. They vote, and that's the number that you get. And so it's very hypocritical to me for conservatives, states' right conservatives, to come out and say like the state shouldn't be able to elect the president the way they see fit. That's just it's a weird concept to me. I don't understand it.
Let's sigh.
But Georgia,
But Georgia,
blue Georgia,
freaking blue Georgia.
I never thought it would. I never thought it was going to happen this year. I didn't. Even when the polls coming out, even oh my God, they're leading, and even all these things. Like it does make you wonder.
Well, the machine got out there. They got people to vote. Maybe Trump actually sabotaged themselves a little bit. We can't.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering like
did he sabotage it too much
did all of this really? And I think that's why Mitch McConnell had such a hard time. Like was kind of on the fence with all this over the past in like over December was because he knew that this was going to hurt his party, and that's what McConnell cares about. McConnell doesn't care about Trump, right?
No, like I said,
McConnell cares about the Republican Party being in power,
right?
If Trump helps that, then yeah, he'll do whatever he needs to do for Trump. But once Trump's getting defanged a little bit, and it's scaring a lot of his supporters because a lot of his supporters are almost to this like cult-like level where they see him as the savior of America, and losing him means America is doomed. I've seen a lot. Like I'm a sadist in the fact that like I go on these like far right-wing websites and read the comments and read the posts, and it's appalling, man. I don't know if you just try it once in a while. Go on 4chan's political board and go on
I go on like second cousins comment threads, okay? That's enough.
That's as far as you go, right? Like your crazy uncle, your crazy uncle's face.
It's already enough. Like that's where you are.
That's
see the
that's probably tame compared to like the stuff that's on 4chan.
I don't want to go on 4chan. I don't want to do it.
And the Donald.win is another message board where it's like you go but just as like a thought experiment, as like a psychological experiment. Just go on it for like an hour and just browse these posts and. Make sure you're using a secure VPN because I'm pretty sure that a lot of these these sites are shady, but I don't trust any of them.
Or being monitored by the FBI, maybe.
Right. I'm not worried about that. What are they going to do? Come to me?
Hey, no, you're not. Okay, you're not.
I didn't post on. I'm not posting on the website. Right. Like insurrection time, but yeah, and anytime. The thing with these sites is anytime anyone goes against Trump a little bit, like McConnell did, or even like when Pence, did his job.
They're calling for his head, right?
Oh yeah, he's part of the deep state, I guess, and he's backing China and he's conspiracy, and the way they think is just
it's so fast too.
And I don't know how many people are there, but when you talk about numbers are a confusing thing because if I said 1%. 1% doesn't seem like a lot. But if I say 1% of the population of this country,
that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. Is it enough to do anything? Probably not. But it's still a lot of people.
It's enough people to storm the Capitol building.
It's enough people to do some scary stuff.
Let's
put it that way.
It was less than 1% of the population the other day breaking into the Capitol building. So
yeah, we didn't even talk about like the bombs and that were found and at the RNC, like
RNC and DNC
and the DNC. That doesn't surprise me, but it's like they really think like now the RNC are the enemy, and and going back to Georgia, I think that ended
because it's king for them. It's King Trump. It's King Trump.
It really is. It's
not a president. It's a king. It's a monarchy, and they believe in divine right, and they believe that Jesus chose Trump to come here and save our country. And I'm not, and I wish I was saying that with sarcasm.
You're not.
It's real.
But I think that's why we need to do a better job educating people about what fascism actually is. because I think a lot of people over the past 4 years have really learned what the term fascist. Because before 5 years ago, when you said fascist, you just thought
Mussolini.
you just thought Hitler, right? Mussolini. But I even have people, and he's Italian, right? He's from Italy, and we talk about Mussolini, and he's like, he was a socialist. I'm like, yeah, he was a socialist until the socialists were like, get out of here, you're crazy. And he was like, well, I'm going to do this new thing now, and I'm going to call it fascism. But even that, I don't think people don't talk about Mussolini in the United States. We talk about Hitler.
Well, yeah.
Right? We talk about Hitler, and when people say
you know what? You know why we don't talk about Mussolini in the United States? Because we have too many Italian Americans. Italy was part. Honestly, you have too many Italian Americans that don't want to talk about the fact that Italy was part of the Axis powers during World War II.
Hey, I'm part Italian.
I know, but so am I. and like growing up, it's like, oh wait, Italy was on the wrong side for like half the war. Like you don't want to think about that fact.
They got crushed, right?
Right. Basically, until they were no longer a factor in the war.
Well, their army was never very good. They needed the Nazis.
But you don't want to think about that as an Italian American. I think we're some generation, and they separate themselves from that.
I mean, you do see a lot of that. I guess, but for whatever the reason is, we do associate fascism with Nazism, and we think they're the same thing, and they're not.
They're not.
There's Nazism is fascist. Like Nazis are fascist.
But Nazism is a whole
it's a whole nother level of ideology.
Fascism is a way of ruling, whereas Nazism is a way of killing people.
Well, it's a fascist ideology that basically says that
certain people don't belong. Right. Yeah. It's a genocidal.
I mean, you could say fascism, and you could say fascism as like, oh, we're just gonna like cage these people off and like put them in another part of the world and say, you're on your own. That's still fascism. It doesn't necessarily need to murder every one of them. But
right.
But we do. That's the thing. I think we do need to and hopefully this will kind of change the conversation about things like that. But we'll see.
All right. Well, I would love to talk all day, but I do have work to actually do that I get paid
Must be
for.
nice. Must be nice.
It's weird. I know. You'll be back there again one day, I promise.
I'm sure. I have a couple applications out right now, so fingers crossed.
Especially as the vaccine rolling out, so.
But luckily, I work afternoon, so we'll still be able to do our podcast.
There you go. Well, it was wonderful seeing you in the new year, even though it's been a dark.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Happy New
Christmas. Year. Happy New Year. Happy birthday to me. It was my birthday.
Oh, that's right.
Happy birthday. On December 28th. If anyone wants to send me gifts, contact the podcast. I'll let you know. The 5 or 6 people that listen, tell your friends.
Tell your friends. We talk about good things, I promise.
We do. I think we do. All right.
All right, everybody. Take it easy. Have a good week.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.